Good morning. Thank you for coming to this press conference. In a moment, the C and the FS will address the gathering. Good morning, friends from the media. Together with the FS, I would like to brief you on two international developments. Hong Kong is an externally oriented economy, therefore we are susceptible to fluctuations in overseas markets. In the past week, with the coronavirus epidemic spreading to many countries, according to WHO, in terms of confirmed with countries with confirmed cases, there are 105 countries or regions. Apart from the mainland of China, the total number of confirmed cases in terms of confirmed cases, 115 plus 1 probable in Hong Kong. 15 countries have more cases. Some have 1,000 or so confirmed cases. For example, northern Italy, South Korea, and Iran. The epidemic has spread to many European countries, France and Germany, which have all recorded more than 1,000 cases, as well as Spain with more than 1,000 cases. Although there are only dozens of cases confirmed in cases, but one tour group from Hong Kong to India has resulted in 5 confirmed cases locally. So we are reviewing the international development on a daily basis to adjust our strategy. As I announced at the very outset, that we have to respond very quickly and must make every preparation for the epidemic. There are many challenges for many countries and regions. First of all, every country and region must be serious about guarding against import of cases. For us, our focus will have to be shifted from concentrating on cases coming from the mainland to probable importation from other countries. As a result, in terms of personal protection equipment, especially face masks, the supply is even tighter. Some of our procurements have not been able to be delivered because of exportation prohibition introduced by some countries. We have a strategy of containment. We guard against the import of the epidemic, and also we have to deal with local transmission. As I said, South Korea, Italy, and Iran have many cases. We have issued a red travel alert in respect of these countries. And for people arriving from these countries, for example, travelers from Korea will not be admitted. As for northern Italy or Iran, travelers from these countries will be subject to a 14-day quarantine upon arrival. We have appealed to Hong Kong residents that unless it's absolutely necessary, please don't travel at this time. Apart from such measures to restrict travel and other public hygiene measures, we also take into account a number of other factors. First, the number of cases in these countries and the distribution. Sometimes we may have to look at a big country, but we would also find out whether there's any concentration. For example, 3 particular regions in northern Italy are seriously affected. But nonetheless, there are confirmed cases all over these countries.
The second factor is the rate of increase of confirmed cases, whether it is an outbreak or a continuous situation, and then the surveillance and measures, and third, the frequency of Hong Kongers traveling to these places. So in the light of the latest development, we have made a review of the situation, and we have launched further restrictions. Today, we are going to meet with the relevant Council Generals, hoping that we can announce as far as possible today further places that will be subject to our port health and quarantine and health restrictions. Of course, we have to take into account the ability of Hong Kong to withstand such pressure. Now, if we are to allow more people into our quarantine centers, we have to consider the capacity of our quarantine centers and manpower arrangement. If people put under quarantine become confirmed cases, we have to consider the capacity of our isolation wards and beds of the hospital authority. And as for the control of transmission within Hong Kong, we still focus on early identification, isolation, and treatment. So social distancing cannot be overemphasized, because experts and WHO are of the view that the situation is going to be projected, and we have to resume normal business in a gradual and orderly manner. But that doesn't mean that we will give up the principle of social distancing. In the past week, as our government departments, in principle, have resumed normal business and service. However, we have also introduced measures to ensure social distancing, for instance, flexible working hours, lunch hours, temperature checks in and out of office, and also strict personal hygiene. I note that you are concerned about the enhanced laboratory surveillance scheme. In fact, our laboratory surveillance scheme started almost day one in our anti-infection efforts. We started Tier 1. Well, we have also Tier 2, Tier 3, and Tier 4. The hospital authority will conduct tests for the virus for admitted patients, and for Tier 4 is extended to all A&E departments and 60 general outpatient clinics of HA. For patients with fever and upper respiratory tract symptoms with travel history are required to undergo the test for virus. Through the comprehensive laboratory tests involving 4 tiers, we have already tested over 28,000 people. As said by Professor Yuen Kwok Yung, in terms of infection control, the more tests we can conduct in the community, the easier will be for us to identify cases earlier and to prevent the spread of the disease and have a better understanding of the incubation situation of the virus in the community. So yesterday we entered a new phase. The laboratory surveillance scheme has been expanded to all private hospitals and private general practitioners in Hong Kong. So for patients presenting with respiratory tract symptoms, with a fever and a travel history, private GPs are encouraged to ask patients to submit a sample or a specimen. The test is free of charge, and we want to cover as many patients as possible. Well, in our public laboratory of the Center for Health Protection, we have a capacity of 2,000 samples a day. Right now, we are only doing 1,000 specimens. If need be, we can ask our public laboratory to boost their capacity. We are very grateful to private GPs and the Hong Kong Medical Association. I met with Dr. Wong of Hong Kong MA last week, and he is very positive in enlisting more private GPs to join the enhanced laboratory surveillance scheme. We have 115 confirmed cases, 14 of which were identified through the laboratory surveillance program. In other words, those patients did not know that they had been infected or had symptoms. So we'll continue to pursue our work in this area. I note that some private GPs are of the view that the procedures are too cumbersome. Of course, that can be improved, as the scheme only started yesterday. So if Hong Kong MA or individual private GPs can advise us on how to improve the procedures, we'll for sure follow up. And I'd like to report on the following. Last week, 2 batches of Hong Kongers affected by the epidemic overseas or from the mainland came back. The first batch was from the Diamond Princess cruise, and by traveling on our chartered planes as well as their private on their own, 258 returned, and they were all admitted to Chunyang as data for quarantine. 9 were tested, confirmed, and 1 probable case. Another cluster was those who came back from Hubei. Last week, in 2 days, we chartered 2 flights to Carrie 469 Hong Kongers back to Hong Kong, and they were all put under 14 days of mandatory quarantine in Chunyang Estate. 431 of them are willing to take the test, and only 1 out of the 451 were tested positive and became a confirmed case. Now we will have another round of charter flights to Hubei to take Hong Kongers back. As we all know, Mr. Patrick Nip, the Secretary for Constitution and Main Affairs, is still at home, working at home, and we had a video conference yesterday, and is arranging for another batch of charter flights to take Hong Kong residents stranded in Hubei or Wuhan or cities around Wuhan back to Hong Kong. The ETO in Wuhan will try to provide support to them as necessary. And now give the floor to the Financial Secretary to comment on the situation of the financial situation on Hong Kong. Good morning. Last night, major stock markets in the US and Europe plummeted, and for our market, it opened slightly upward, but then we have to be very cautious. Our index plummeted by 1,100 points yesterday with a big turnover. However, for our securities, futures, and derivatives markets, they operated usually in a normal manner, in orderly manner. Because of big market adjustment, Hong Kong X yesterday asked for an extra $5.8 billion in security from the major clearing organizations. And market was very active yesterday, and the total turnover was $29.7 billion in short selling, accounting for 75% of the total turnover, a little bit higher than the 14.9% on average. When there are volatilities in market, usually short selling percentage would rise. The SFC will closely monitor the market situation. The SFC has always closely monitored trading activities in Hong Kong X and over-the-counter to ensure that there will be no abnormal positions and activities and no market rigging activities. SFC would pay particular attention to the operation of intermediaries to ensure their financial soundness, to ensure that activities can be conducted in a usual and orderly manner. Now, for the monetary fund, our forex market operates in a normal manner, and the dollar packet is within the range of 7.76 and $7.79. Our banking sector is operating in a normal situation. They have a good quality asset, and they're able to deal with the cyclic changes in the market. Hong Kong MA will ensure that our monetary and forex market will operate in a healthy manner, and will ensure that our linked exchange rate will operate in a normal manner. In the past few years, we have done a few rounds of we have done some stress tests. We have enhanced our ability to withstand volatility and enhance monitoring of market conduct. Faced with volatilities in the market, we will remain vigilant as usual. We will closely monitor development of the market, and where appropriate, we will introduce in a timely manner measures to consolidate our stability, financial stability, and investors will have to take extra care in managing their own risks.
We now have a Q&A session. Please identify yourself before you ask your question. Good morning, Mrs. Lam. Cable News TV, cable TV new reporter was knocked down by a police officer with a shoe the day before yesterday. The police have yet to announce the result of this investigation. Do you find this a problem? And also, have you ascertained the facts from frontline reporters about the brutality from the police that they have faced? And it's been reported that there were 7 police officers in a car park taking turns to insult a citizen there, asking the person to apologize to the 7 police officers in turn. And when they knew that they were photographed, the police officers asked the reporters to hand over the photos copies. And also, the CSOA said that the review committee was under preparation. That would be ready in January. When will that independent review committee be ready? Perhaps in mid-March? Thank you for your question. The SAR government and I myself cherish press freedom, and we also attach importance to facilitate the work of reporters. Some 2 years ago, when I resumed the office of CE, I have taken measures to facilitate the work of reporters. But in the past months, well, from time to time we see situations whereby the reporters' work has been hindered, which we don't want to see. And usually this will be involving a scene of violence or riot, which necessitate the intervention of police. And we would like to advise the reporters to follow the tips and instructions from the police on the scene so as to be safe. I understand the police wrote to the media organization last night expressing their apology over the matter. And the police said that the officer did not intentionally push the reporter. As I said, the police also respect press freedom, and facilitation will be provided whenever necessary and appropriate. If the Hong Kong Journalists Association would like to communicate with the police management, I will welcome such a move. The senior management people of the police force are more than willing to do this. And in a recent meeting with the commissioner, I understand that this is also what he wants to do. If you want to communicate with senior people outside the police force, well, you may want to contact the CS4A. Actually, in November last year, there was a meeting with the Hong Kong Journalists Association between the Hong Kong Journalists Association and the CS4A. As for the second question, I don't have the details. But anyway, our police force is a professional and a police and civilized law enforcement agency. In the past months, the police force have been working under tremendous pressure. That is very obvious. As Mr. Tang, the commissioner, said, if some police officers have committed any wrongdoing, the police force will take action. For individual or cases which you think are very wrong, please try to use the appropriate channels to lodge your complaints. We will follow up these very carefully. On the Independent Review Committee, earlier on, we announced that the recent epidemic has meant that not just the Hong Kong SAR government, but the whole world will have to deal with it first. So our full attention is on this epidemic, and on top, the FS would have to deal with the financial side of the issues. So we are not likely going to make any further response in respect of that committee in the short term. Mrs. Lam from Cable News, I would like to follow up on the question of my colleague being pushed over by a police officer. The police officers actually run in an angled path and push the reporter from behind. Would the government announce the identity of the police officer? And also, when the Hong Kong JA when the Hong Kong SA met with the administration, they did ask the administration not to condone police wrongdoing. So are you saying that this is also your stance? As for the arrangement of bring Hong Kong people from Hubei, are there going to be more charter flights to bring back these people and allow them to return to Hong Kong? Is that you are going to step up precaution measures? But what you have announced are just some monitoring measures. Are there more concrete measures for enhancement of our preparation? I noticed that the police force did write to the relevant media organization, that is your organization, telling them what they understood the situation to be. The police force will look into this. The police is the police of the view that it was not intentional. It was not a deliberate act. As I have said, when the situation is chaotic and the police officers had to enforce the law or disperse some people, so in a very chaotic situation and in the fit of the moment, something might have occurred like that. So I hope you would all heed the advice given by the police in covering such events. The day before, yesterday, the police detected a case involving a gang in relation to the preparation of explosive. And it said that such explosive will be used in public order events. And as a result, the police officers have to stay alert at all times. And we don't want to see such incidents of reporters being pushed, but we have to understand that the context. And also, generally speaking, I never condone violence. Every officer, every civil servants have to carry out their duties in a civilized manner. As therefore, I cannot agree that the CE has condoned any public officers in doing anything illegal or improper. As for sending another round of charter flight to Hubei to bring the Hong Kong people back, I know they are very anxious to return. And some organizations are in contact with these Hong Kong people. We've been informed that apart from the 400 or so that we have brought back, we already handle some priority cases, such as pregnant women, those who have to return for the diploma of secondary school examination, and people who needed to come back for surgery or medical treatment. But there are more in Wuhan, in Hubei, especially in cities outside Wuhan. We're anxious to move forward, but every time when we want to make such arrangements, given that Wuhan is still under strict regulation, transportation has not been resumed fully. We need to get special permissions to arrange special vehicles to take these people from their homes to the airport. So meticulous planning will be required in advance, and we have to involve the Hubei government. Although they have been very helpful, our requests have been ceded to generally, both in terms of personnel and facilities. Although I cannot make an announcement on when we are going to take the next move, but the Secretary for Security and the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs are working on it. We would need to do the registration first before we arrange for charter flights to bring them back.
Fourthly, about our quarantine centers. Our hardware is a bit more abundant. Comparatively speaking, we have 1,000-odd places, but of course we cannot operate up to capacity. For instance, when the first batch of passengers from Diamond Princess came back, we started the operation of one block, and then when Hong Kong residents came back from Hubei, we started another block. Now we will have Hong Kong residents coming back from Iran, the northern part of Italy, and South Korea. Many of them are Hong Kong residents, and we have about 100 of them under mandatory quarantine. I have no any hard indicators as to which batch should complete their quarantine period before another batch can be taken back. But then if another batch comes back, it may bring pressure on our quarantine centers. As a result, the confinees and our public health may not be sufficiently safeguarded. We also have to look at the percentage of confirmed cases among a batch. Because if the figure is high, then we will create pressure for our hospital authority as well. Every day at 4:30 press conference, you're all eager to know the percentage of our negative pressure ward and isolation beds occupancy rate. So every time when we have a batch of returnees, they will have to go through Port Health procedures and quarantine. We have to know the schedule and also the procedures. In any event, the prime consideration is public health. FS, thank you. With regard to the last question, the past year or so, we have launched a few rounds of strengthening measures for shock prevention and enhance our ability to withstand tests. stress. For instance, we have enhanced our monitoring of intermediaries and enhanced checks. And then we have asked all derivative operators to make a due declaration, and including hedge funds. We'll look at the situation of short selling and also the positions they hold. The Hong Kong MASFC and also the Insurance Authority working in a coordinated manner. We have not seen any abnormal or concentrated risks or risks of market rigging. We will continue to be very cautious and prudent and vigilant in monitoring the market situation. If need be, we can launch strengthening measures.
Hi, Mrs. Lemon, Financial Secretary. Elvin from Surfside Morning Post. I have 3 questions. You've mentioned the number of cases are on the rise in Europe and internationally. Can you confirm that you have reached out to the Consul Generals of Italy and India or other countries that will be imposing further travel restrictions on these countries? And secondly, you've also mentioned that business should start to resume in Hong Kong. Could we also clarify, does that also mean you are going to relax the travel restrictions against mainland China? There's some of the ports will be reopened or relax some of the previous restrictions. If not now, when? My final question is directed to the Financial Secretary. How would you describe the fluctuation, the performance of the U.S. market in the past few days? And is it only a short-term or long-term is there a longer-term effect given the coronavirus outbreak? Would you be looking to adjust some of the economic forecasts given the epidemic would last relatively longer? Is there other specific tax cut or reliefs we can look forward to? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the answer the first 2 questions. First is Hong Kong is an international city and an aviation hub. That's why in the last 2 months or so, we have been keeping the consular community informed of the strategy, of the measures that we have been taking, so that when the time comes and they know the background. So this is a general type of briefing. We have done at least twice. I personally did one, and the Chief Secretary for Administration did one, attended by almost all the members of the consular community. And I have also written to them and sent them my first month report on our anti-epidemic work. That is the general type of reaching out that you have referred to. The more specific type of contact happens when we have, after full deliberations of the various factors that I have outlined in Cantonese, i.e. the number of cases confirmed in that particular country or area, the speed of the number of cases surge. Thirdly is the frequency of Hong Kong people traveling to that particular country. And finally is a measure taken by that respective authority in controlling the spread of the virus. Now, having taken into account all these factors, if the Hong Kong SAR government has decided to introduce some measures, whether it is in putting that country or area under a red outbound travel alert, or impose port health requirements or quarantine requirements on arrivals from that country or region, or even more drastically, to restrict the entry of arrivals from that country, then as a matter of respect and courtesy, we will reach out to that particular Consul General. And that's exactly what we are doing today, so that we could make the announcement within today. Because the last thing is for the Consul General to hear it from a press conference without being told in advance. So that's a sort of reaching out in response to your question. The second question is, When I mentioned that operation of government services and businesses and generally the operation of Hong Kong City has to resume gradually and orderly, is because everybody is now saying that this epidemic will last long. So I'm sure everyone will agree that we cannot put a halt to the normal business and livelihood for too long. So, but that doesn't mean that we will relax the restrictions. In the same way that when we go back to work, it doesn't mean that we are not doing social distancing. Quite on the contrary, we are being even more vigilant in ensuring social distancing, in ensuring personal hygiene, in appealing to colleagues to wash their hands more frequently, to wear a mask properly as and when necessary, and so on. So for the time being, because of the uncertainty in the global situation, there are no plans yet to loosen any of the measures that we have put in place. But this situation has to be reviewed almost on a daily basis. So I can update you on whenever changes are made. But for the time being, we are imposing more restrictions in light of the global epidemic situation.
Thank you, Chief. As regards the U.S. stock market, the market had been very volatile in the past week. The further development will depend on a number of factors. The outbreak of the coronavirus, the drop in oil prices are relevant factors. But on the other hand, their own domestic economic and political situation are also relevant. For us in Hong Kong, being a small and open economy, we have to be vigilant and we have to monitor the situation very closely. I think first and foremost at the moment is to roll out the various measures under the anti-epidemic fund, as well as rolling out the measures in the budget. As to the economic forecast and whether further measures are required, we will keep an open mind and monitor the situation closely and look at the impact of the various measures. Thank you.
今日記者會到呢度，多謝大家。
Well, that's the end of today's press conference. Thank you.